And we're going to talk about the subconscious sexist. Okay. We first crush people to the earth, and they claim the right of trampling on them forever because they are prostrate. Lindia Mary Francis Child. Gender equity has been discussed a lot this week. Men equal to women and women equal to men. Efforts have been made to improve the separation that has been tearing the relations between men and women. During the time spent at the World Affairs Seminar, we have heard from multiple speakers, and they have had many influences from across the globe. In our presentation, we will demonstrate what gender equity and social justice means to our group. We wanted to analyze whether or not being sexist is a voluntary mind state or a subconscious state. From this thesis, we conducted interviews and surveys amongst both delegates and strangers. The data collected will be presented shortly, as well as our other efforts to improve world gender equity and social justice.
Only 10% of an iceberg is visible. The rest is hidden underwater. This 10% represents our conscious thoughts and perceptions, and our pre-conscious and unconscious processes happen underwater. 90% of our mind hosts memories, fears, immoral urges, selfish needs, and irrational wishes. This theory was developed by Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud, who is known as the founding father of psychoanalysis. There is a common saying that we use only 10% of our brain power. However, that is not entirely true, because only 10% of our mind is actually controllable. The rest happens without awareness. According to Freud, our behaviors are the result of a constant conflict between what is called the id, ego, and superego. As the instinctual drive of the id proposes internal desires and impulses, our ego regulates these options through a realistic principle in order to please the id in the long term. Once the ego filters these options, our superego decides what is morally and culturally right. The resulting product is pushed to our conscious 10% and is displayed through our behaviors. So what does this mean? We all have accidentally said something we probably shouldn't have by instinct, like a reflex. This was out of our control and we most likely became red in embarrassment. This reactionary behavior is an error in speech known as a Freudian slip or a parapraxis. These slips occur due to the interference of an unconscious wish or thought with the behavior guiding superego, a glitch in the human mind, if you will. Let me change the topic a little bit. May 15, 1869 marked a day of true inspiration. Millions of women gathered to create the National Women's Suffrage Association in America to raise awareness against the injustice of the 15th Amendment, which authorized citizens the right to vote. Eventually, the 19th Amendment emerged from the efforts of the suffrage movement, and voting rights were no longer restricted based on sex. A majority victory, or a major victory for the age of equality. However, problems still persist today. In 1972, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, was organized to further the fight for women's rights. The organization still exists today in the 21st century, meaning the fight is not over. However, this is only one of thousands of organizations. But I thought we were a free and equal nation. Isn't that what we preach? Let me ask you, why do we have all these specific meaning groups to recognize difference in others? Generally, we are an equal nation, right? America is known as the melting pot for a reason. However, it is hard to understand why we take so much pride in the title. We stress diversity and equality for both man and woman, white and black, Asian and Hispanic. Everyone is equal, we say. But if we truly believe this, why do we keep on reminding ourselves of the fact? For example, why did the ACLU had to organize themselves in the first place? Wouldn't true equality be reached when we no longer need to emphasize or honor an individual group, when it becomes normal? Somewhere in there, our minds still believe it is necessary and important to promote indifference. In other words, to re-educate society that it is okay to be foreign. I think the motive is because we truly haven't achieved equality for any sort in America. If we did, why are we here today? How ironic. Decades of lectures and amendments in the Bill of Rights, and yet we still haven't truly developed an equal society. Is it just human nature to revert back to old concepts? Has our culture scarred us to the point of no courage? Despite the fact that we defend equality and wish to end injustice, 90% of our brain is out of our reach. Slips of the tongue expose America to hypocrisy and reveal the weakness of the human race. This underwater part of the mind is where we believe the nature of sexism and any other discrimination exists. We set out to expose the subconscious inequity in society, The 6-question variable survey was conducted to a random sample of 51 participants ranging from multiple age groups. Our goal was to exploit the nature of pair fantasies and gather data of how truly sexist we all are.
Oh, I always wanted to do that, so just kind of curious, so sorry about that. So just kind of funny, I guess. But so what we looked at in our project that we had was this: we had a map of all the countries in the entire world, and that map represented kind of the gender gap between different countries in our world as we see it. And this was done through the World Economic Forum institution, and they did this study. And what it showed is the inequality and equality of the worldwide nations. And the darker countries had shown to have more inequality between men and women, and the lighter countries seem to have more, or had a tendency to have more equality between men and women. Hello, how are you doing? Good, okay. All right, so we're having a little technical difficulties, but let's explain the situation and behind what we're going to talk about. Okay, so we're talking about consciousness, the subconscious. So if we're looking at countries across the world, and we're going to talk about the gender gap and what this all means. So if we had the map, you would see that some countries have an extreme amount of injustice in terms of opportunity for women. And that is a direct correlation between the development of the country and the education of the country. Development goes to education, education goes to development. And through that, you have understanding. And the World Affairs Seminar is all about peace through understanding. So let me give you some background on that. If you look at Iceland, Norway, the United Kingdom, those are one of the fairest countries in the world in terms of gender equality. What this means is that they have prioritized equality more so than many other countries in the world. And they've done things about that. But what's really noticeable is what they've done with education. Education is a priority in those countries more so than many other countries in the world. And if you look at countries that have the largest gender gap, like Yemen, Egypt, and Nepal, you would see that they don't have the resources or the opportunity to express that same amount of knowledge which endorses gender equality. So when we're talking about consciousness, you have to talk about understanding, and with that, education is very important. Thank you.
Working along with this international perspective, in 2000, the United Nations held the Millennium Summit. During this, they established the Millennium Development Goals, 8 goals for the betterment of the world that were supposed to be accomplished by 2015. The third goal on this list was to promote gender equity and empower women. The main task of this goal is to eliminate gender disparity in education. Along with this, there are many other tasks, including the increasing of the proportion of women in national parliaments, increasing the amount of women in paid jobs, and increasing the amount of women in top-tier jobs. Although the Millennium Development Goals, including the women empowerment portion, may not be dealt with in full by 2015, the fact that the United Nations passed these goals shows consensus on a global scale. Women empowerment and gender equity are important issues for the world that we live in. And with time and with work, these issues can be dealt with.
Okay, well, this is fun. We're working on getting our video back. Okay? Oh, here's Jake. So can you just give us 1 minute, we'll get that video up and running. Yeah, I'm going to give the jokes to him.
Okay, actually,